We're going to go ahead and get started here in a minute. Next up, we have Nishan Joseph, and he is the Sales Engineering Division leader and has a ton of experience. I'm excited. He's going to talk to us about the Copilot trap and hopefully avoiding it.
Check, check, check. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. All right, so thank you for that. My name is Nishan Joseph. I oversee the sales engineering division at ExcelQ, but I also do kind of wear a couple of different hats. If you haven't heard of ExcelQ, that's fine. I'm going to introduce you to the organization shortly. That's why I'm here. But more importantly, we're here to talk about the Copilot trap and why AI-generated code, rather, is essentially not sustainable, right? Now, some of you might be familiar with this, but in the year 1986, NASA launched the Space Shuttle Challenger. And despite internal concerns from engineers about the failure risks of the O-ring seals in cold weather, the launch still happened under immense pressure from leadership, from politicians, from public expectations. The shuttle, unfortunately, exploded 73 seconds into the launch, and all of its crew essentially perished. Now, the root cause wasn't a single failure part, right? It was a systemic failure. The O-rings have always and had always shown signs of weakness in all its prior launches, but the decision makers had their own, had become more accustomed to kind of interpreting those signals as noise. And each piece of data in isolation didn't look catastrophic at all, but no one synthesized the broader, bigger pattern or picture. And that's essentially where the problem was. Now, if I had to kind of draw an analogy, a parallel to why we are here, every organization is under tremendous pressure to scale QA and do it quickly, right? Obvious method, adopt the AI-generated code, build their entire regression suite. Of course, within weeks, you have hundreds of tests, clean code, and also probably very neatly integrating into your CI ecosystem. The leadership, extremely thrilled. Automation at warp speed. Of course, there's a hidden cost to that instant gratification. And that's when by like sprint 3, you're now about 60% of your tests begin to fail. Why? Because the application obviously evolved, right? Your application's undergone changes, API refactoration happened, your UI has undergone changes, new logic has come into play. And the AI-generated tests were essentially just too rigid, too isolated, and essentially lacked like resilience. What's the problem now? The issue is that the QA engineers couldn't fix what they couldn't even understand fully. There is no reuse, there is no abstraction. It's essentially inconsistent patterns. There's tremendous amount of duplication of logic in multiple different files, and every single test was one-off. There's no context or architectural backbone to any of this. So what happens next? Well, let's get AI to do it again. And that's when AI tries to do it again. But then what does it do? It starts all the way from scratch because it has no memory. There is no learning. There is no ownership, right? Fast automation very quickly became fast technical debt. This is when you essentially go back to your basics. You essentially result in a crash and burn. Ultimately, teams essentially begin to scrap the AI-generated suite and then start looking at the key core concepts of any automation tool, which is all about centralization of assets, reusability of assets, having referential integrity, having modularity, and having collaboration. What's the kind of takeaway that you want to have over here? It's AI can write code, but it doesn't understand your system. So just because the rocket launched, it doesn't mean that it's safe. And just because the test passes, that doesn't mean it's built to last. Where is it that the evolution of AI, has essentially taken us? I'm sure a lot of you have heard this, have seen this, but if I were to kind of go into the AI glow up like timeline of sorts, we started back in the 1950s with the Turing Universal Machines, basically the grandpapa of all AI, and it only spoke logic puzzles, right? And then came along the predictive typing era, where AI could finally say, did you mean duck? And save us a lot of embarrassment. Then came the deep learning, which essentially around the 2012 odd is when I'm smart now, and all of a sudden AI can understand and recognize cats better than humans can. Then hit the transformer era, the 2017 odd, and I'm not talking about the Michael Bay kind. These are the models, the GPT-2 models that could actually write and sound half human. Well, fast forward to today, AI is like painting, it's coding, it's writing sonnets, basically doing everything except paying taxes. And now we're heading into a future of fully autonomous agents, smart, self-improving robots that once might eventually start to schedule our meetings and maybe even attend them for us. Anyways, where does this all lead us, right? This essentially takes us to why I'm here. If you haven't heard of ExcelQ, we are a test automation and test management platform, fundamentally all baked into one. All the analysts of the world, the Forresters, the Gartners, they've all essentially given us their leadership quadrant space, their magic quadrant spaces. But not just the fact that they've given us their leadership quadrant, the magic quadrant, but we've also scored the highest amongst all the test automation platforms, commercially available test automation platforms out there. And the scored metrics is interesting because that's typically what any test automation tool should have. It goes back to everything I just talked about. Now, why did they kind of put us over here, right? It's because of our platform's ability to address the true lifecycle automation journey, which starts from as simple as the low-code citizen development, which empowers business users, SMEs, to come and play a role in the platform, because you don't need to know any programmatic language. It's all codeless, natural language driven. The full-on integration with agile DevOps ecosystems, which is where you can do your early testing, your continuous testing, and of course the likes of the standard things that any platform should have: the test design aspect, the asset management, the source control, the change tracking, and of course, like I said, the AI native capabilities of NLP and self-healing and adaptive impact analysis, etc. All of these made available in a cloud environment, right? SaaS platforms, which essentially means that it's completely codeless and it's also extensible. Now, the final piece on the cake, the icing on the cake, is the fact that Design Studio brings all of this together, which I will show you shortly, which basically delivers the speed, the scale, the simplicity that is essentially should be a part of any automation. But what can you actually do with a platform like ExcelQ? Everyone talks about like web applications, mobile applications and the likes. It really doesn't matter what you're trying to test in the platform. It could be any form of web applications to any form of desktop, thick client applications, POS applications, mainframe applications, to any form of middleware backend applications, so API testing, SOAP, REST, JSON, GraphQL, gRPC, Kafka, database validations, PDF validations, Excel validations, the ability to do any form of mobile automation, native, hybrid, web-based mobile applications. And then, of course, the commercial available applications out there, Salesforce, Workday, Coupa, and the likes. Coupa, for example, if you're familiar with them, we have been chosen as the testing platform of choice at Coupa. We work with 98 plus partners and, of course, a ton of their end customers. If you've heard of Encino is large in the banking segment. Encino have chosen us as their platform of choice as far as testing is concerned. They use us internally within their engineering division, and also their PS division, which is called Encino Admin Plus. We have many such customers. I was talking to somebody just now, Atlassian, the parent company for Jira, they use us internally as well. And several such folks who are using us internally as well. And that actually made us to kind of further add on a layer to the platform, which is where those accelerated components, accelerated behaviors were introduced as an added layer on top of the natural language, English language, which are always going to be release aligned with your application under choice. So Salesforce, Workday, Coupa, they all have release aligned assets pre-built and pre-configured and given to you for you to essentially use as a part of the platform. Now, AI has always been a part of our ecosystem pretty much since inception. It's nothing but a host of algorithms that we put together initially. And it has been the case over the last 10 years. And you will see it kind of play a significant role in the natural language automation, the element healing, the bot healing, the auto test case generation capabilities, all those typical bells and whistles that any platform should have. But this is where we introduced the autopilot, which was about a little less than a year ago. And this is the point at which we essentially brought in our next gen of AI-powered tool sets and engine that essentially drives continuous self-optimizing automation, right? And it transforms the way teams develop, design, execute, and scale up their automation, which obviously kind of tied in very neatly into the platform's inherent capability of natural language processing, the AI-led automation, of course, the smart self-healing as well. The engine has primarily about, I would say, 6 major segments. I'm not going to go into too much detail on each of these segments, but the discovery engine essentially kind of looks into everything that you can think about bringing in that, the application from a business standpoint and understanding the value of how stitching and use case together from the business standpoint would make sense. The concept of full stack natural language based automation builder brought in the concept of having to give you that, the ability to seamlessly build, generate across whatever is in your tech stack without having to rely on flaky locators and the likes. And then the entire design first AI architecture brought in the entire modularity, the reusability, the referential integrity that I was referring to before. And then that neatly tied into the entire ability to heal your scripts on the fly. The ability to understand things change, things move around, things have gone behind something. The ability to kind of then take all of that and give you powerful insights through an extremely powerful dashboard mechanism. And then, of course, the self-healing component of it as well. Our clientele is right across the spectrum. So if you're looking at anything from some of the largest banks out there, Wells Fargo, Comerica, Barclays, name it, they are essentially a part of our clientele, to some of the largest in the airline sector, United Airlines, Southwest Airlines, and the likes, to many in the healthcare segment, but also an equally large presence in the federal government space. So all of the 12 Federal Reserve banks use us internally, 5 lines of business, including FRFS, FedNow, and the recertification program called OASIS use us as well. But if I were to kind of talk about one of our customers, which is the United Airlines, they started using us close to about, I would say, 6-7 years ago. They're one of our first few customers, actually. When we started with them with just one application. It was their Salesforce that needed automation. But now, if you go to the United Airlines website, and hopefully from here on, you've had a positive experience booking a flight, and you've given in the information, the destination, the origination, your date of travel, and you hit book, that goes through so many systems, Siebel, Sabre, SAP, Pega, Salesforce, hits the mainframe, and then eventually you probably want to see that booking confirmation on your mobile phone. That's what we call a real world user journey, an end-to-end use case that cuts across multiple different technologies in your stack. That's essentially where the platform's capabilities comes to light. This is exactly how we're helping United Airlines, 180 plus applications, 7 years after the first application that we started automating with them. And that journey has been phenomenal, with them seeing significant amount of reduction in overall framework, design maintenance, the reduction in overall time to automation, the overall just speed to automation, getting things out the door, right? I want to show you just 2 quick examples of what Autopilot fundamentally looks like. The first, and again, Autopilot is a 7-part concept, and I cannot cover that in a 20-minute talk. I'm just going to show you just 2 essential parts of what to expect. The design studio is one where you can fundamentally bring in any application under test. You might have an application which is fundamentally already built out partially, so you're trying to understand more from an existing app, or potentially you're trying to learn something from a net new app as well. Or maybe your app is not even ready. It's probably still in wireframes, for example. What we essentially do, we can essentially learn your application from scratch and build out all those baseline concepts I just mentioned. The modularity, the referential integrity, the ability to create those reusable assets, making those reusable assets centralized, and at the end of the day, making this entire environment collaborative so that everybody who has access to that workspace or that application or applications are able to fundamentally leverage each other's work without having to duplicate anything at all. And that's where a framework really comes into play, and ExcelQ plays a significant role in doing that. What you're seeing on your screen is a simple example of where we took a mock banking application. A single page was tapped on, and it detected more than 25 different modules on its own. We picked just one just to simplify the overall design process, just to give you a representation of what that looks like. And that now is essentially going through a discovery process of understanding what are the various permutation combinations of business processes and flows I can stitch together with just those specific modules I've identified. We only picked up one, but in reality, what you saw there could have landed you with hundreds of pre-built, predefined assets, both modular in nature as well as workflows that go end to end with fully automated scripts under the hood, which means at this given point of time, you are essentially sitting back, hitting the play button, walking away, getting a coffee, coming back, and automation's done for you in a full-blown framework mechanism. Another example of what that looks like is you might want to go through what we have as prompt engineering, what we call as prompt engineering, where you're now in the application and you'd like to kind of do something. What do you want to do? I just want to simply log into this application and validate something. So give it a blurb, simple English language, your user story, your requirement definition. The platform will then take that, it'll try analyzing what it's been given, go back and check whether it has an asset built, and essentially then go ahead, create the workflow, leveraging all the existing assets until it reaches the point where it figures that it doesn't have something new, and creates that new asset, dumps it back into the centralized pool, and that becomes then a reusable asset. But you also have full-blown automation by combining both existing assets and creating something new as well on the fly. That doesn't stop there. The platform will also help you create various permutation combinations of data sets that it thinks you should be validating the same flow up against. Again, completely an AI-generated mechanism. I'm just giving you few examples of this, but this in itself is usually a 1 hour long talk that talks about how we do things and why it makes sense for you to use a platform, a framework like this to do so. Now, a lot of what we've done so far, and I want to leave, and I want to be respectful of time, we've done so far is talk about how the platform has capabilities to kind of help you, if you had to kind of go up against a code-generated, ecosystem. The same actually applies to if you are using an open source driven system right now. We have metrics that prove how there's benefits in overall approach to automation, whether it is the reduction in the framework development time, the maintenance behind it, the overall like script development mechanism, which is all these English language, natural language driven sentences, which not just applies to a simple web application, but actually a host of pretty much anything that might be in your tech stack. So if you're looking at PDF validations, we've got something right there. All you have to type in is PDF, and you get a host of commands for doing PDF set of validations. Maybe you want to grab something from a PDF. Maybe you want to interact with a PDF. Maybe you want to work with an Excel file. Maybe you want to run a macro in Excel file. All of these already have these natural language commands built out that you can essentially use. Maybe you have a database that you want to tap into, right? You can just type in DB. A host of connectors are visible. Go ahead and pick the specific connector. Maybe it's an Oracle database. Provision the specific value, and automatically it will give you all that, give you a connectivity to a database, which you can then query and use the value as well. So you have the power to do all of this without needing to know any programmatic language. It's all English language, natural language driven. It's all powered by traditional AI algorithms. It's also powered by Autopilot, which is the Gen AI portion of this, and essentially brings to you a full framework, which essentially is something that you can then leverage without having to be too concerned about the technical debt that any other platform would render. I'm 1 minute over time, but I'd love to take any questions. Yeah. Yes. You can, the automation.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Where is the person talking? Here you go. Sorry. Just want to make sure everyone can hear.
So the question is, it's natural language processing and mostly English. So do you support multiple languages?
The automation itself is in English language, but your application can be in any language. And I just want to point out an advantage here. We have a lot of customers, especially retail giants like Skechers, Deckers, Elf Cosmetics, and a ton of those, who have multiple regions. It's the same application, the front end especially, but they've just built a single automation script, and they run it up against different languages because of what we can do using Autopilot. That was a very good question.
Thank you. So, in an environment for a company which is transitioning from traditional tools like Selenium, Playwright into AI, what would you say distinguishes a full-fledged tool like SLQ vis-a-vis the use of Copilot and other just add-ons?
Yeah. So the first, I think, 2-3 slides was actually talking about the disadvantages of having a code generating mechanism in your ecosystem that's going to just essentially give you a ton of technical debt versus giving you reusable modular components in a collaborator system. That's the first biggest advantage of using a platform like ExcelQ, where there's a framework that's given to you. And the second and probably bigger advantage is the fact that you don't need to know any programmatic language. You can essentially achieve any level of automation you want for whatever is in your tech stack, even if it is the mainframe that you're trying to automate. You can do that right here using this natural language-led mechanism. Thank you. That was a really good question. Any other questions? Or are we good? All right, thank you. I do have a book here to give out, which is In Sprint Automation Mastery. One of the 2 questions, who would like to have the In Sprint Automation Mastery book? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, team.